Hi, you've clicked onto today's tropical tidbit for Friday. Over here in the Atlantic, the biggest feature of note is Tropical Storm Igor over here, who was downgraded to a tropical depression yesterday but has regained tropical storm status easily. This is well beyond a minimal tropical storm that they have it at right now. This is a moderate tropical storm over here, but you can see it's still dealing with a little bit of easterly shear aloft. The low-level center is displaced on the eastern side of the convective ball, but it is a healthy convective ball that has been sustained for many hours, and this should eventually get pulled in and wrapped up and will continue to intensify. Notice how it is starting to wind up a whole lot farther east than its predecessors like Danielle and Earl did. Danielle and Earl had to wait until 50-60 west to get going because of the dry air, but Igor has this big tropical wave, couple of low spinners in front of it, and this big barrier here is a barrier of moisture that is just pushing a bunch of dry air out of the way out in front of Igor, and this is allowing him to not have as much of a problem with dry air, and so he's beginning to wind up a bit sooner than our other Cape Verde systems have this year. He should live up to his name and become a major hurricane somewhere out in the central Atlantic Ocean, and I do believe that this has a greater chance to recurve than not east of the United States, but you know, places like Bermuda should keep an eye on this, and there's always the chance that it tries to get trapped in this pattern, but I do think at this time recurvature is most likely, but we will be keeping an eye on it nonetheless. Over here we have Invest 92L in the Eastern Caribbean, trying to enter the Eastern Caribbean. It's near the Southern Antilles Islands right now. You can see how the intertropical convergence zone has retreated southward away from this, allowing it to try to separate, and this is both good and bad for the system because you want it to separate in order to allow it to consolidate, because we can see it's still a very broad low, not very well defined and tight, but now that it is separating from the ITCZ, it will be able to try to tighten up. The bad news though is that it is now vulnerable to all the dry air that is going on in this region, and the problems it's going to have is, you notice the lack of clouds over here, and this is because of a lot of dry air and subsidence, because the big ridge aloft is sitting over here. You got a lot of northerly winds coming down on the eastern flank of the high, and when these northerly winds come down, they slow down and converge, causing them to pile up and sink, and subsiding air warms and dries, and you get no clouds and sinking air, and that of course is bad news for any developing tropical system. So this is going to have some issues over the next couple of days. Development was expected to be gradual. I still think we could see a tropical depression in a couple days out of this, and the reason I don't think it'll die off is because this trough that's coming down, there's a little bit of a tut in here. If we turn on the upper winds, we can see there's a little bit of a tut in here, and as this long wave trough presses down, it should try to press the tut into the ridge over here just enough to acquire some resistance and turn on more of a southwesterly jet in here, and that should allow some outflow to get going and more of an anticyclone over the Eastern Caribbean developing, and that should provide some more ventilation for this system in a couple days or so. But right now conditions are not ideal, and development should be very slow and gradual at this point, but I don't think this is going to just go away. If we look over here at the computer models, you can see the general track coming west-northwest. We got these up here, which I think these hurricane models, the HWRF, JFDL, and the Canadians in there too. I think these are way too far north with their normal ridiculous poleward biases. I do this other group down here though, the European is also running through this group to the south, and I think these are a little bit too south as well. I don't actually like either of these groups. I like something more in between. I think this is going to come right into this area in the triangle between Cuba, Jamaica, and Haiti in 4 to 5 days, and I think it's going to be around here. Let's call it somewhere around 76 west, 18.5 north. In 4 to 5 days, I think it'll be in this area, and the reason I think that is because if we look at this is the NAM, or the WRF, depending on which you know it by, 24 hours, and yes, this is not a good model for the tropics, but it is, NAM stands for North American Model, meaning it was designed for North America, and it can have some good ideas with the long wave pattern aloft across the continent. So if we look at this in 24 hours, trough digging into the western Atlantic, see this break in the ridge right here. The ridge is centered over here, the Atlantic ridge is centered over here, break in between. Here's 92L somewhere west of the islands in here, entering the Eastern Caribbean. It's not too much of a stretch to see this take more of a northwesterly motion over the next few days as this trough digs in here, and you have this break sitting in the ridge. It wouldn't take much to get it up into this area as opposed to coming farther west. like this, like the European and some of the other models have it. And this is something that will be a little iffy. The models have had very bad verification and spread on this so far, not very good agreement, so it'll be interesting to see how this plays out over the next 48 hours or so with the movement of the system. And if we look at the European, this is day 10. It takes, as I said, to the south, it takes, this system would either be named Julia or Carl, depending on whether this out here gets named first. And this takes it straight west-northwest right into Mexico, no threat to the United States here. This is Igor over here, just east of Bermuda. Bermuda's covered up by the isobars over here, so this would be a bad storm for them, and it's something they should watch to see if he recurs far enough west. We got this system behind Igor, another Cape Verde storm. And the thing though is, if we look at the European ensembles, this is day 4, 500 millibar. Operational run is on the right, ensemble mean is on the left, and we see the break in the ridge on the ensemble mean. And here's our Invest 92L over here, and you can see the ensemble mean spread over here, and you see this break. And again, with this break in here, it's not too much of a stretch to think that it's in here, more of a northerly location, trying to sneak into this break over here. If we go out to day 6, we can see that the break closes a bit as this trough goes out to try to catch Igor, but if it's already used the trough to lift north, you can see the operational run has it in here, okay, and that's where a lot of the ensemble spread is, but there's a lot of uncertainty, and some of the members are seeing it farther to the northeast over here. And this is what I'm concerned about, is if we get it in this location, even if it follows the same movement, if we take this track right here and shift it north by a little bit, you can see how this could end up being a threat to the northwestern Gulf Coast in the United States instead of just Mexico if the location is simply shifted further northeast. And if we go all the way out to day 10, you can see the operational run has it going into Mexico. That would equate to over here, but you can see the spread showing a number of possible locations in the Gulf of Mexico, and if you have it somewhere in here, you're threatening Texas instead of Mexico. So that's something to keep in mind. It's still a long way out. We got to get the system to develop first, and there's a lot of uncertainty with the fragility of this pattern. But this area of the world is favorable for systems to strengthen. So if this survives and gets in here, it could be a pretty significant deal. And Mexico and Texas, I think, need to watch this closely and keep an eye on the situation. All right, that's it for today. Thanks for watching.